Yeah, as was mentioned, throughout the process there will be the activity of how do we work with the community, how do we engage all of you, plus anyone else you think to belong. We have some very preliminary ideas up here, but what I was going to do is walk through some of the processes that we have engaged in throughout the country. We do work around the country, and then come back to this at the end so that we can actually begin to have a discussion. I don't know how much, I am the National Director of HDR's Planning and Urban Design Group, so we do a lot of work with communities. Probably 80% of what we do is redevelopment related work, where we get into existing situations such as this. We help assemble groups of people, help assemble steering committees. In fact, much of the work that we would do in a similar process is already there, it's already here, it's done. This is great, it's fantastic. I will also confess, I'm also a licensed architect, and I got to spend some time this morning walking around your downtown, and there wasn't a block I would have said, man, what a great building that is, or what we could do here. So this is just incredible. I grew up in the Northeast, so coming back and looking at this kind of architecture and seeing this kind of community is just a phenomenal personal experience for me, and just makes me even more excited to see what we can do here. Public input and community outreach strategy. As most of you know, most of our clients are public sector clients, and I think as most of you are aware, you can't do a public sector project in this day and age without some very extensive outreach process, getting the community involved. In some cases, it's mandatory because of where the financing comes through. In other cases, it's simply the nature of the project is very complex and intricate. And the reality is, it's just politically, that is the right thing to do. I mean, a community involves everyone in the community, and the idea is to get that participation to whatever degree people can participate. We were talking over lunch, and Kathy mentioned that they had a series of meetings, and some people went to every meeting, even though they're arguably repetitive. That's great. There are people like that. There will be people who will come to one meeting, and they'll say, this looks good to me, you have my approval, and then you won't see them again. So the process here is really, our goal here is to establish a process that is absolutely set up to work for Holyoke, okay? I am the outsider here. I don't know the community other than this time I've spent and a little bit of the background reading I've done. So my job is really to facilitate the whole process. I am opinionated. I will certainly, have ideas and things, but by and large, my job is to work with all of you and everyone else involved in the community to help move this process forward and bring us to both, I think, greater consensus, but also greater levels of understanding of what the effort is that folks are trying here. How does this work?
Just scroll it down.
Scroll it down.
Oh, you got
There we go. Okay, goal, facilitate extensive community involvement. This is a previous project that we did. We ended up with 300 people coming to a variety of workshops such as these. We tend to like to make sort of physical aspects of the workshop, so we'll have maps or we'll have models. We like to get people engaged in a physical way, just doing things throughout the process, not simply sitting and listening, but actually getting involved. Provide many opportunities to participate. A lot of times the public involvement process is at 7:30 on Tuesday the 12th, we will have a meeting. You are invited to come. That is the sole extent of the process. That will attract a certain number of people. The rest of the population is out. The idea here is you tell us what is the best way to reach out to people. If we have to go to people, we will go to people. If we have to have multiple events, obviously everyone has a work schedule. Time that might work for you won't work for your neighbor, so we have to do multiple events that way. And there are now, as we know, there are many ways to reach out to people, and we'll talk about some of the opportunities there. Get the community actively engaged. We love it when situations like this occur. This was a workshop we were doing, I believe this was in Omaha, Nebraska, and you get people together in groups of 8 or 9, you lay out a problem, you get them actively involved, and suddenly your consultant team has gone from 6 people to about 106 people. And they're really getting into it. And not only are you generating, we talk about it, Dan's group will do a lot of quantitative or objective data collection. They'll tell you, how much costs are, how the economy is growing, how the economy is not growing. We do a lot of qualitative data collection. We'll talk to you about what people's interests are, what their concerns are, what their fears are, what they would like to see happen, et cetera, et cetera. And so the two sets of information, the two types of data will blend together into the final report. We try to create what we call participation exercises, and I don't know what they might be for Holyoke. I've shown examples of others, but regardless of the setting, there's a way of getting people actively engaged. Nowadays, with the capacity of computer modeling and the ability to do simulation, some of it is really almost becoming game playing. And I suspect that won't be the situation here, but once the computer center is available, we'll have a great old time. We'll put you guys on contract to help us as we do work around the country. Make it engaging and fun. I mean, this is people's community, and to just stand up in front of them and lecture and say, here's a few boards of what's going to happen, that's not all that engaging. You can make this a very engaging process. And then you build a constituency. What they're going to say is, I went to a public meeting tonight, they're going to have another one next week. You need to go to it. It's a pretty cool thing. We had fun there. We did some good stuff. We learned more. It's very important to us that it's not simply they tell us and then we take it and we run. The idea is to get the community involved in presenting their ideas. And then the follow-up on that is relate these community ideas to outcomes and show how those outcomes actually get implemented. In that case, we had a corridor project. There was a redevelopment situation very much like this. We actually built scale models of the corridor out of foam. It's very easy to do. It takes about a day. And we gave people, this is what this use would be, this is what that used to be. You tell us where they should go, how they should go, where you want them, et cetera. And then that became the drawings that became the basis for part of what went into the final documentation. So someone can say, on Tuesday the 12th, I went to that meeting and I spent 2 hours and table number 6 came up with this idea. And now here it is 6 months later, and there's our idea in the final document. Because again, my job in this is to facilitate that discussion. It's not to design anything or to produce any particular output. It's to figure out how to get that discussion going and then how to document it in a way that dovetails with the work that Dan and his group are doing. I'm going to present a quick little case study that we just finished earlier this year, South Omaha, Nebraska. It's a community-based redevelopment area. It was an area of about 7 square miles, about 35,000 people. Effectively built out, older neighborhood from the late 19th, early 20th century, historically Eastern European, that in the last 20 years is now 55% Hispanic. So a transition there, and a lot of old building infrastructure, a lot of rehabilitation needed, but not massive amounts of disinvestment. In fact, fairly stable in many ways, but desperately needing a kick as far as the economic aspects of things went. Funded and sponsored by a public-private consortium, so it was both the business community was involved as well as the public sector and a number of NGOs. Strong established Hispanic community, many of whom were first generation, who spoke very little English. So it wasn't a case that people were bilingual and you could work that way. Literally, they did not speak English. And so the approach, which we laid out very carefully beforehand, before we even went into the process, bilingual surveys, we did all the surveys, everything that was published except for the final report was completely bilingual. The final report had about a 10-page summary that was done in both Spanish and English, and the rest of it was English. Community interviewer program. We discovered that in the community, if I were to walk in and say I'd like to talk with people, I'd get 2 or 3 people. But if I could establish a relationship with someone in the community and then empower that person to talk to people, they get 40 or 50 people to talk to them. And so it literally became an extension process. Here are some issues we're concerned with. As you go to your next neighborhood meeting, could you ask these questions? And they would come back to us, and we'd say, wow, that's great. We now have that kind of input.